be your pro. I'm making I have a course I'm teaching tonight, by the way. Anybody wants to join in. But I have a course and I'm doing creating emergent literacy resources. And so tonight I'm showing PowerPoint, Google Slides. I'm showing slide decks, like so PowerPoint, Google Slides, and Canva presentations.
Yeah, I have a talking books directory. There's a few of them for early elementary.
And do you so what's your pro tip for when you're making like in PowerPoint versus Google Slides, for example, what's like a pro tip that you would give for teachers creating something? Like what is something that people might not know in PowerPoint that they can do that's really cool?
Oh, I don't know.
We had done some like animation stuff where you can highlight what the salient feature is with a dark red line or whatever is good for the student's vision, and then kind of have it like move in or like pulsate. So a lot of our TVIs really like it because they can highlight whatever that salient feature is. You know,
That's a
Beth,
good one.
we had someone, our former colleague who works up in Bucks County with Lauren Enders now, Rachel Smolin, she had done a presentation on this at ATIA, and let me send you her slides and her
Oh yeah,
because don't reinvent the wheel. She shares this openly.
Yeah, and Beth, the other thing I see Hillary put in the chat was what I was going to say is the richness of the accessibility checker in PowerPoint.
Yep, I already had that it's so much easier to do that. And has anyone noticed recently that when you they make me start creating my slide decks in PowerPoint instead of in Google Slides, because when you put in an image from the web, it automatically will add alt text and it will give you the option to approve it or edit it. Big time saver. Even if you have to edit it, still it's a big time saver.
Yeah,
it's a good point, Beth.
Yeah.
It's huge because we have to model that because we're not all taught how to make things accessible. So that update with PowerPoint and their accessibility checker does go a long way. And also modeling it because it also gives you some tips on how to make it accessible and why it matters. So that's a really good point.
And I know that's not probably I realize it needs to be for everybody, but like I know some things that the audience that I'm going to be talking to is going to be about making things for emergent literacy, and it may not be the top thing in their mind because the individuals that they're using this with are not, it's not about the screen reading, it's more about, it's more about the teaching reading. But it's like an important thing, like that it's so easy. I mean, I'm sitting here making a PowerPoint, a Google Slides, and I'm realizing I got to go back and I'll text everything now. Like I didn't, like it's one of those things. It's like you either do it as you go, and for me, then I lose my train of thought, or you have to do it afterwards. And so I've been super excited when I've been making some things in PowerPoint lately, and it's like about it. Oh, I gave the wrong email to Mary. I mixed up my two emails.
I was going to say, I don't think that's your email address.
It's Beth at lessonpicks.com. I mixed up. I'm like, see, that's just puts where I am. I'm in town for 1 week this week. That's it. So I have almost a whole week in town. I'm headed out of town on Friday. But anybody else have any anything specific, like especially like for what you might use with a student that might make it?
Yeah, I think if they've never done anything with anything like that before, I think reminding them like starting like simple is okay. And even if at the beginning, if they're a single switch user and they're using the PowerPoint book for that student to engage and turn the pages of the book from the very beginning, and to not reinvent the wheel. There are tons of books and activities already created out there that you could just search, PowerPoint adapted book, and you're going
Right.
to come up with ones that you can kind of shift. And again, like I don't have to tell you to do this, but like insert, a lesson picks high contrast image in 2 seconds, like that combination of things, I think is super powerful for someone who doesn't want to create something from scratch, right? Wants to go find a book, but maybe that book needs to have some high contrast features to it. So like
Oh, and yeah, definitely. Oh, and Lauren, you just reminded me, that's what I needed. Remove background on photos, that you don't have to go into remove BG or anything else. That it's right there.
Yeah, it like used to be the remove BG, but now you don't.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like right there.
And then also you can do like virtual classrooms. Have you done that? On
Yeah.
PowerPoint?
Yeah, no, definitely I have. This is like really specifically for like, if you wanted to make a resource that you were going to use with a student, like just kind of like for people that maybe have done PowerPoint. I mean, I think most people have used PowerPoint or Google Slides like at its basic level, but might not be aware of some kind of cool things that you can do.
Yeah, and I think the things that are already out there, sometimes if it's the same way I explain lesson picks, like if you don't even know what's possible as
Right.
a possibility, then it's hard to wrap your head around about like, how would I use this? So some of the, like the alphabet books that Laura,
Yep, I have that in there.
whose name I'm blanking on,
I have
Laura,
that in there.
just to show them, hey, like, and if your kid doesn't like apple, but they like something else that starts with A, like making a personalized alphabet book to me is like a less scary way to introduce that. Like, go take pictures of the things that start with letters that your kid likes and show them how to put a picture into PowerPoint. And then it's a personalized kind of remnant book in a way that is not, I don't think, scary to somebody who's never done anything PowerPoint based.
Yep. And I already have Laura Clark's, and I have for other places for easy to kind of adapt templates. I've got Slides Mania and Slides Carnival, which has both for Google Slides and PowerPoint. Anybody else have some? Linking slides in a choice board. Yep, that's a good one too, Jen. But anybody else have some like favorite places that you get either templates or that you get already made PowerPoint books or
So,
Google
yeah, I
Slides?
would just be careful in the Slides Mania, Slides Carnival end, because you lose a lot of accessibility when you
yeah.
go to a fancy template.
Yep, exactly. And I'm going to also go in and show them how to go into the Slide Master to take things out to make it less. So sometimes you can still get like that flavor that you want without it being crazy. Oh, right. Yeah.
Also, superheroes, the A
Yes.
through Z superheroes. I thought about making a PowerPoint for a student when he was in middle school, but had severe memory problems, and but he knew he was really into superheroes and the voices and everything. So
Cool. I like that.
yeah.
Ooh, I just found. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I have shared some of the stuff from the site that Lauren shared, but there's a lot of symbolated text.
I know,
in
I'm
the
looking at
ones
it. I
that
hate
she
to, I
uses.
hate to put that there.
So it's like there's on some of them there aren't.
Right.
And on some of them it's highly symbolicated.
Symbolated. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever that word is. It's been
Just
a
had this
long
conversation this
week
morning
and a
about
half.
symbol supported text. I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be like one of those last things that people move away from. And honestly, until something like News to You and they move away from it, there's such a large amount of users that are unique users that I think it's going to be hard for them. And again, yes, you can use the higher level text and not have the images, but like until that's not presented as like the curricular option, I think we're going to have a lot of people not understand why it's harder, because they're not going to go read a research article, right?
Yeah.
They're,
Agreed.
or even
I
a blog
just found,
post.
yeah, I know. I just found that Carol Zingari one from it was a practical AAC blog one from 2014, and it was really short and simple. And I'm like, oh, I hope if I share this, they read it, because it has two nice points. It's like why we don't do it, what we used to think and what we're thinking now. And then it had an article from Karen Erickson and Penny Hatch and Clendon on there, which was so good, but I don't know that they'll read it.
I know, it's such a, I mean, I already, that's like already a part of like the course that I teach. I did write an article about symbol aided text. I did on accessible.org.
Oh, share this link with us,
I
Beth.
will.
Because I need to like send this one out because I was looking for a few things
And
in a 5-minute search this morning, and
Yeah.
I would love to have that article.
I've learned, Lauren, there's a whole trail of conversation about it in the Comprehensive Literacy Facebook group.
Yes.
And I have learned, because I'm always trying to be present to where whoever it is that's asking the question is coming from in that group. And a lot of time it's a parent doing things on their own and they've never had a therapist with them, or they've never had an educator who worked with them. So I'm trying to not be the don't do it, like just kind of try to slowly lead them towards like, let's talk about what the principles are in the book and let's talk about why, and let's talk about, what can we start with instead? Because I think they're doing it well meaning, like we want to help the kid be able to read. Like it's not a like, we don't think the kid can read, therefore we're just going to put pictures there. I think it's well meaning as an intention, but I've kind of had to slowly guide some conversations to like, let's talk about what you're doing now. Let's talk about how it's working for you. And usually the answer is it's not working really well. Like they're not seeing progress in the way that they would want. And then you offer to like, hey, would you be willing to change this one thing? I think it's a slow and steady versus a like, just don't do it. Because I think if we go to the just don't do it, especially with parents, they're going to be like, well, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
The question had come up because somebody wanted to use it in Boardmaker to write to a family that they didn't think had strong literacy for visual written literacy in their home language. And I was like, well, you shouldn't be using it as a translation tool. And I'm not really sure where you are. So I'm going to give you some other information about symbol supported text in case that was where you were coming from. So yeah, it was kind of a bumpy one anyhow, but yeah, a hard no never does well. It
But
would need a lot
it's one
more
of those
coaching.
things like when we know better, we do better, but I think we have to keep kind of picking away at it, like
Yeah.
changing that mindset around it, because it is really challenging that way.
Yeah, I just kind of likened it to some other things that like as we learn more, we've changed our practice, because somebody was trying to, she just hadn't had a student in a while that had complex needs. And she says, I'm trying to make Toby's. How do you get the background? And I said, oh, which, 10 or 15 years ago, maybe when she had someone, we were doing symbol hierarchy and that. And so I said, oh, like this is a good opportunity to kind of coach her and say, oh, there's some more information about, symbols and there isn't really a symbol hierarchy. So the kids learn what we teach them. So it
Yeah.
opened the conversation.
It is, and it's, and I that article that I posted in there has a lot of links to different research, including research from the gen ed, from typical development, which I think is also helpful, like for people to see, like it's, one of those things. I always forget about the photo album. Thanks, Judy, for pointing that out. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like gonna grab that.
Hillary, can you tell me more? Use of captioning in PowerPoint and emergent literacy, like having captions going while they're also reading a book?
Yes, but maybe
Okay.
it's kind of thinking about the intentionality of that, thinking about the features of PowerPoint and captioning And then captioning in different languages is something that's part of PowerPoint. And maybe I haven't fleshed this out fully yet, but it was just an idea, like, we know that there's some research about using captionings to support literacy, but perhaps because this is early emergent literacy, this is too soon to try that. Or is there research around using captioning in lesson modeling? You know, not necessarily a book, because that text is there, that printed text is there. But if it's an activity in PowerPoint that may not
Can-
have,
Can I get the access code?
that might help. I hope I'm
Yeah,
saying-
well, I guess where I
Sorry.
got lost was when you started talking about other languages. My question is, are we using the captioning to translate for the adult that's with that person? Or were you talking about the actual captioning for whatever story is being read while it's being read? Help
kind
me.
of both, kind of both. Kind of both, because there's different purposes and different tasks that are involved. So if, like, you're trying to communicate with a parent and you're using slides, would that work? Is that something that supports their researches, but also too using closed captioning, and maybe not just specific to PowerPoint, but use of closed captioning in the general sense to support early literacy.
Yeah, and I actually agree with that too. Like I'm gonna talk about that in terms of like when we have, like when people want to put video, you know, we talk about that in terms like if you want to put a video on for a kid, let's put it on with closed captioning, right?
And that I get 100%. I was just trying to make the connection to like emergent literacy books. And would you have captions running while you also have whatever text is on the page? I think that's where my brain got a little lost, but it is a Monday after a crazy week. So it might just be that my brain's a little lost.
Not necessarily, Alyssa, because I have a similar brain as yours at the moment. So I'm probably not conveying what I'm trying to convey.
Can anybody else translate between Hillary and me?
I think Beth really much had it on the head. So
Because for videos, I get it 150%. And yes, I want
Yeah.
PBS having captions on when your kid's watching it.
right. So if you're like screen recording, reading the story, different task. So that's kind of, I'm sorry if that wasn't
Yeah,
clear.
no.
Funky brain. But that's such a great feature in PowerPoint too, just, you know, being clear as the purpose and the task and when, I guess, would be where you would delineate that. But for like making a book specifically, unless you were screen recording, does that make more sense?
Yes, to me it does, but
Okay, good. Well, that was what matters.
I'm only one piece of it. Well, and I guess to me, I mean, I remember in one AT town hall a long while ago, we like all tested out Microsoft captioning and translation and all those features. And I think they have a place, but I don't know if in the context of what Beth was asking about, that place is there.
Right, and Sarah
but-
brought out
Wordless
wordless.
pictures, that's a great
Yeah,
one.
if those wordless books are there, then I could see the captions serving as some kind of like narration to your shared reading experience where, you know, you're talking through what you're seeing and the captions are available. And maybe the captions are available as a model to whoever that adult is that you want them to go do this shared reading experience with a kid, that you're providing the captioned model of what would I say in shared reading. I could see that, especially for a wordless book.
I know Lauren loves wordless picture books. I do too.
No shame needed, Lauren. You could just flat out plug it.
Just a little. No, it's getting old now. I got to share it before I got to write something else, you know. It was really funny because I just the Lion and the Mouse, you know, book, that wordless picture book. I was just talking about it, and then I got something home from my kids' kindergarten teacher, and they're like, "Oh, we're doing this great thing," and I'm like, "Ah, yes." So it was fun. It came full circle. Okay, so I had a question. What are, and I don't know, this is a little touchy topic. What might we do about AT chat in Twitter land?
I know, I
We need,
know.
I think we need a Murata to have that conversation.
I
I know,
know.
and Karen, I'm having such mixed feelings about being on Twitter.
Me
And
too. And I'm like, but this is where this group, like this is how I found out about this group. This is where I've networked and made so many friends. And
There's a new feature on Quora, I think it's called, that lets you set up pages that you can use as a platform for something like AT Chat. And there's some
Well,
other
and
alternatives in Twitter, but how do you get, if you do that, how do you get that word out?
Well, and there are other like straight platform alternatives like Slack or, anything that we use in a back channel. Like they use Slack for AAC on the cloud as a platform. And I could see that direction. We've talked about using Voxer and going back and forth with that. So, but I think we need a Mike and a Karen to have that conversation and to figure out like, where do we go from here?
yeah, I'm just feeling kind of like yucky as I'm like closing out a couple of conferences and seeing people that I connect with on Twitter. And I'm like, oh, do I want to be posting here? What do I do? So I've started
Yeah,
to like I need to like up my Instagram, and my Facebook is so old that it's like mostly like family. So I started connecting with people. So if you get an invite from me on Facebook, sorry, it's like all my kids and family, and it's probably like pictures of me when I was like 20. Um just
and
ignore those and remember that I was once fun.
I
No,
love
no,
Instagram and
they're not those
Facebook.
kind of pictures.
I know, I love I mean, I use Instagram and Facebook. I think it's harder to have those threaded conversations
I know.
on it. And that
And we have the same issue with Facebook. I mean, we have people that are anti-Facebook, and so
Right.
that platform doesn't work. And so I mean, again, I think there are some straight alternatives. There are, I don't know, maybe there's no topic for AT chat and we have an AT chat about what to do about AT chat.
It's such a conundrum, isn't it? Because on the one hand, it's like, okay, this is no bueno. But on the other hand, it's like, you know what? Bunch of explicatives, I'm going to be on here anyway because you're not going to force me out.
We're going to use it for good.
And that might be where my use of Twitter evolves, is that it is very specific and now it's broader.
Well, my Twitter is for work, period. And it is for chat and is for all that. And that's, to me, that's the only space I engage with Twitter on. Like, I don't even know that I spend much time on Twitter other than doing those things.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of like,
work. I don't post anything personal on Twitter the way that I do, with rare exception. Maybe I retweet like a sports thing, but I do look at it for news, which I need to, find some other alternatives. But yeah, and maybe it's just personally weaning things in a little.
Yeah,
different.
I'm with you, Beth. I feel like what I need to do is I don't respond politically, but I do use it for the input. And I think I just need to go through and like unfollow all of my people, like all of the other sources other than it just being what it was intended for me, which was that personal learning network for AT. But then I kind of hate that too, because a lot of it's interconnected,
Right. I need somebody to, no,
I think, I mean, there was a ton of people in our school division that were signing up and like starting to tweet and like really doing it for work like 6 and 8 years ago. So that's when I started it. And I was like, oh, great. This is like a clean account. That's just my AT and SLP network. And whereas like my Facebook was more like my personal, like, I don't know, there's like my friends and family, people like I went to high school with and college with, and I don't know, it's like a little different. So
I think beyond the political pieces, the fact that they got rid of their accessibility department in Twitter makes it feel like, and here that's what we're all about and pushing, and now they don't even have that department?
I had the same reaction. I saw that go and I was like, why am I still here? Like, this is not valued on this platform. I felt the same way.
It was kind of the turning point for me.
But I also read this morning, it is for me too, because that's just disgusting. But I also read too that there were people that, and I don't know if this is true for the accessibility team, I would hope it would be. And if it's not, well, that's a different conversation, that there were a lot of people that were laid off that
Or
were
the entire, apparently the entire accessibility. I haven't verified that, to be honest.
right. And that's kind of, there's a lot of this information going on, and I don't always know what's accurate or true, or, but also there are people that did get laid off in that organization that weren't supposed to. And I don't know if that is also true for the accessibility team. So, and then there's lawsuits already starting because of employment and giving proper notice and not giving notice. And it just seems like a really bad dumpster fire that is not good. But
I
we all,
had a friend whose husband was directly impacted, and like all the things that they said about like the Slack channel and things like that, that it just literally cut off the next day, were true for this one person. So that also makes me be like,
Yeah. And so I guess maybe I stand more in the like, not wait and see forever, but like giving it just a little bit of time to even itself out and figure out where do we really land. And at that time, hopefully there have also been some conversations about, from between Karen and Mike about what they want to do moving forward, and how we could, whether we're shifting it someplace or continuing to use it. But I want to believe the ship is going to right a little bit. Now, whether that means there are people back in accessibility that we trust are doing what they need to do. If I had a crystal ball, I'd have some lottery numbers.
Yeah, if we.
I wouldn't be trying to solve the Twitter problem.
yeah, right.
Right,
What
right,
is it,
right.
like
Yes,
a billion,
yeah,
exactly.
1.6 billion or
Alyssa would be
something?
buying lottery tickets. right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, like, I think the big picture is, and I don't feel like I'm inappropriate to speak on behalf of Karen and Mike, is like, how do we continue what the momentum we already have? Like, what platform allows that? And is it continue on Twitter? Is it a different platform? Like, I don't think the idea is, okay, well, AT chat just stops. Like, that to me doesn't feel right. That feels more icky than what's happening with Twitter.
Right. And how do we have it in? How do we
Totally agree.
influence things for better?
Yeah.
perhaps?
So what tasks are we going to give to Mike since he was not here?
Seriously, he has just blown this off.
Yeah, we need to volunteer him something.
Well, he needs to solve this problem. That's what he needs to do.
Solve the Twitter
This to get
problem
Mike
right now.
Here together. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So being able to kind of have a conversation, maybe, I don't know, Naomi, if you know he's available next week and he actually will be at town hall, since maybe you have a insight into his schedule, or if that's just, we try to figure out which of the next couple of weeks of AT chat that we could get a Karen and a Mike at, that we could have the conversation and figure out like what is the majority of the consensus, Consensus
of the
I'm gonna
majority.
have some more caffeine. Naomi, sorry, you have no insight. We can all bug him and see when he's going to join us next, so that we can tell him all the things he has to do. Because I think, again, ultimately, to me, it would be about how do we continue the momentum of what we have already in community, so that everyone feels comfortable with where we are. And again, I think it may take a little time for us to see what does that look like. Obviously, it doesn't affect what happens on Mondays, but it affects what happens on Wednesdays and throughout the week. Yeah, it's not your fault he's popular, Naomi. Anybody else have any problems to solve besides
And
Twitter,
Naomi,
the
you
one
do
that we
not need
can't?
to wait. Yeah, I was going to say, Naomi does not need to apologize for Mike. That is
No.
not his job.
No,
Right.
no, not at all.
Job is just to be your own wonderful self. we can rag on him ourselves.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go on with my same thing with and thank you all. I'll pay you all your royalty fees afterwards. Canva, like what, and I don't mean Canva for creating like artwork and stuff like that. I mean Canva specifically for presentations. Anybody have like their pro tip for using Canva when you're making a presentation?
Know your audience, because accessibility ain't super
Yes.
wonderful there. Because if to me, yes, you can provide them a PDF of the handout, but even if you run it through Checker in Adobe Pro or Adobe at all, like you're going to have to retrofit a lot of what's in your PDF handout. So then I think you go back to giving them like a text only handout, which then depending on what you're presenting may or may not be the medium. And so then I think, okay, Canva has a lot of great things, but right now, is it the platform for presentations when you're thinking about accessibility? That's a stretch for me. Like, can I make some images that are amazing and help explain the concepts I want to use? Yes. I'm really hesitant to recommend it for presentations
Yeah,
because
has
of
any,
that.
I have been too, and I wasn't even going to include it, but I want to like, I'm like, oh, there's a
I
couple,
would-
because
Beth-
anybody created an adapted book in it, like.
Did
made
you
a book.
talk to Sharon Redmond?
Redmond? I need to email her.
Because
Yeah.
I know she presented at Closing the Gap using Canva and did some other things.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, knowing her, that there was some accessibility and of things. So
Yeah,
she's the
that's
one that I've seen.
Yeah.
big consideration there too, especially if you're exporting it as a PDF, because you have to go in and hand remediate because it doesn't pick the reading order correctly at all.
Oh, yeah. No, and I'm thinking not even in terms of something that would be read. I'm thinking really in terms of like, if you wanted to make a simple picture book in Canva, that would be that you would project digitally. Like, is there anything about, I mean, I'm in the same place as you. I like almost didn't include it and I'm like, ugh. So,
I think Alyssa's point of knowing your audience
Yeah.
is very salient for that. Because that's knowing who you're presenting for and if they have accessibility needs, or like you said, projecting on a board is vastly different for like a whole group thing as opposed to that access piece. So
right.
Hi. What happened? I guess the voice.
You're good, Mary. We can hear you.
We can hear you. Hi.
Can you, okay, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep, Mary, we can hear you.
Okay, I had a bad experience. I worked for a week and a half for a school, and I was supposed to have a coda or a para on the other side virtually, and they were so short they didn't have anybody on the other side. That was the end of my job. So it's a mess out there. 300,000 school employees have left the school system. So yeah. And I went into I had an ESA class, Education Staff Associate, that Washington has, and they were really heavy into the MTSS. And I guess in 2 to 3 years, all the schools have to acquiesce to that, but they aren't right now. And so I think that's really good what they want to do, but the schools aren't on board. At least the school I was at was definitely not on board. So. Any comments?
I mean, it's something that we're seeing everywhere in terms of staff, whether it's classroom teachers or therapy professionals, whether it's we're leaving because it's very rarely, I hate the work I'm doing with the kids. It's either salary or honestly,
Politics in the school.
most of the staff that have left our school system that I'm responsible for, it has been salary related. And that's part of it. You can't separate it from the political here, because
Yeah.
they kind of condensed our starting salary, again, like long craziness, but like I think it's connected to all of that. And so my role, I feel, is to protect the staff I do have and to try to take the things off their plates that allow them to go in and be therapists, and do their job well. So if I can take administrative things off their plate or conflicting meetings off their plate, like that's what I see part of my role as, to help. Does that magically make everything better for them? No, but I think to have somebody that they know that's like an ally, that's like, okay, like I can't fix everything, but like I'm gonna send you your favorite snack every once in a while. But it's sometimes you also feel like your hands are tied, right? Like there's
Yeah.
little I can control from the big picture in terms of like, I can't control their salary. I sometimes can't even control their caseloads, but I think doing the things we can do for the people that are in our immediate spread, maybe they're not even people that you supervise, they're people that are coworkers. I mean, we are very fortunate at the office I work in, every once in a while, there's just like this little thank you post-it note on your desk. And I think those are the things that, again, do they balance all the other stuff out? No, but do they make it easier to walk into whatever you're going to face that day if you like, okay, I got people around me that are in some way trying to cheerlead.
Right. If you have people to support you, which of course, I'm a new kid on the block, so I didn't have anybody to support me. So, yeah.
They
They
don't
also
see it
said
getting better,
they
unfortunately.
also said things for occupational therapy specifically. I guess I'm old school or something, but I guess the psychologist has, if you're under 2 standard deviations, but that is not an occupational therapy qualification anymore. So, and then what's the other one? I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Well, and in terms of any related service, really the guidance that IDEA gives us is there's not do they qualify for this related service, right? And it's because of the way that we've used that language, like they qualify for OT or they're eligible for OT, but IDEA doesn't really use that language related to related service. They've qualified for a special education service, and now
Yeah.
are they in need of the related service?
Yeah.
So, and with the exception of kind of speech and language, we've never had that, like, you have to give a standardized test. As you know, there are a lot of kids for which we cannot, like a standardized test just doesn't exist that helps really grab who our kids are on paper. And so I think, more and more, honestly, what's happening, Mary, is as RTI and MTSS are coming in, you're seeing a lot more conversation about like, what is it that's needed for this student to be successful? And I think the bigger scheme of things is it's not what score did they get on a BOT or on a
Right.
VMI? It's
Right.
like, who are they and where are their deficits in, and strengths in terms of who they are.
And then there was a big push with literacy committees to address handwriting because the occupational therapist is not there to teach handwriting. So, and where the school district I was in didn't have any of these. In fact, I guess you can say that you are not an MTSS school district. Some schools actually say that. So
I don't think they'll be saying it for long.
yeah, right.
Sarah, that's a great question in the chat. What kind of things do you do to create a culture that kind of shifts that thought? I mean, I know for my staff that I don't directly supervise them, but I'm responsible for all my OTs and PTs. I don't do their evaluations. I'm just their support. And in the very beginning of the year, I sent out a Google form. And some of the questions were like, what are the best ways you receive feedback? You know, is it something that you would prefer to have it in writing and then us talk about it, or have a Google Meet or face to face? And then in those, I also ask things like, you know, like what's your go-to like candy or thing that you really love? And those are the things that like appear in truck mail every once in a while for me. And sometimes I don't even say who it's coming from. They can figure it out. But to me, it was creating the culture of like, there's no stupid question. Like, we have lots of brand new staff. We have, we're one of the few districts in our area that I think hire new grads. It's always been an oxymoron to me in school system practice that people are like, oh, well, we don't want to hire you in school system practice until you've had some experience, but then nobody will hire you to give you that experience. So I will, and it means that there's a lot more mentoring on the front end. And so like being able to say, okay, this is a great therapist I can pair you with, and then I'm available as support too. I think just having that and having some combination of like, we have monthly meetings, but like our next meeting is like half social, half meeting. Because I think like trying to make sure that there's some connection, especially because we've been doing lots of our work separated over the last couple of years, that there's some kind of connection so that like if they've got a question about a kid, like they remember somebody else who said, oh yeah, I had a kid that was like that. Like there's some kind of connection where they don't feel like they're reaching out to a stranger. So I think it's big things that create the culture, but it's also little things like sending a post-it note like, hey, you did a really great job in that meeting. I know you were nervous, but you did awesome. Like just an email on their birthday, like little things I think make a big difference in creating that culture of you're not this tiny little fish in this big pond. Like we've got like schools of fish that we support together.
And Hillary, I'm reading what you wrote in the chat, and I feel like that's a big part of why people are leaving too. Like you're burning out because you just give and give and give. So I love that authentic, like I think we've all gotten the canned response from an administrator or supervisor where it's just a very generic email. So I love how you're giving specific examples and sticky notes. And I think sometimes it's those relationships that keep us in a job, even when we're struggling or we feel like we're giving so much. So the more that we can keep doing that for everybody, and then finding somebody who can be your bucket filler too, so that you're not always filling everyone else's buckets, are huge.
Right.
Which is part of this group, right? Like, I feel like that was like last week, I couldn't come because I was in a meeting and I was so sad because I think sometimes this group for me, or AT chat, even if it exists outside of Twitter, like that's what fills my bucket sometimes, to see other like-minded people. So
150% agree. Like,
Yes.
you know, it's hard when you do a role that even your administrator, who maybe your evaluator, doesn't really get what you do. So like then to be able to have a face-to-face conversation like this, or to see somebody at a conference someplace and just be like, I've just been, you know, struggling with A, B, and C, and then go like, I totally get that. Even if there's no answer, like it's okay that there's no answer, as long as there's this somebody who says like, I get what you're saying and I understand it. And you know, because they do a similar thing, like they're not just like blowing you off, be like, I get it, whatever. Like it's a truly, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those relationships, like I'm so grateful for the relationships that I do have with the folks that I work the most closely with. And I think it's like taking 5 minutes to develop those relationships. And, you know, like this group is like my AP family. I was saying to some people when we were at some of the last in-person conferences, I was like, I told my husband, he's like, wait, how do you know these guys? I'm like, this is like, I've been meeting with them every week for like 2.5 years. And like, these are like, I don't know, you can't say like my Twitter friends, or this is not, it's so much more. It's so much more to just be able to come to a group of people who really get it and understand you and where you're coming from. And we're in kind of like a we might be the only person doing what we do in the district that we're in, or even the region that we're in, you know?
Yeah,
So,
you definitely feel out there. And all the teachers, well, they were overwhelmed. They wanted me to pull out everybody. And they didn't want, and I did, he makes suggestions about pushing in and says, oh no, that time is for academics. We can't push in. So how do you work? You know, it just didn't fit for me. How do you work with that? I don't know. Especially when we don't have a parapro or a coda on the other side.
Yeah, I think it's a slow and steady mindset because it is old school to think like, okay, you're going to come. OT is the time where those kids disappear from my classroom for a little bit, or speech is that time when the speech therapist comes and picks them up. But I think it's kind of a, I don't know where the line in the sand was, but I feel like we're having a changing of the guard towards, you know what, I'm gonna push in during science time because there's lots of writing happening, and that's where I can help support the student. And sometimes teachers need to see it in action to understand what does that really mean, that we're trying to help in that way, because it's so anti what they have known. But just because it's what they've always done doesn't mean it's the best thing or the right thing for that specific student. There are some students that I would still recommend we pull out and we work on some individual skills. There are a lot of students for which that push in is the best model, but it takes a lot for teachers to get to the place where they understand the why. And again, it goes back to developing that relationship, I think, with the teacher, to be like, hey, can I just try something crazy? Like, you might think I'm just like way out there, but like for Joey, can I just push in and like, I'll run a group for you, right? Send all the kids
Right.
through my station.
Right.
I think it's
exactly.
slowly building that relationship with the teacher to where they understand that you're not, trying to get out of doing something.
Mm. Get out of doing something. That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, because I think that they think if you're pushing in, maybe you're working less than if you're pulling a student out,
Mm.
and again, it's all about mindset and perspective, and having that conversation with the educator to say, like, here's what my goal is for him. I want to be able to do this activity on his own without me. And the only way I can really push in and try to help support that is to do it authentically when the activity's happening.
Mhm.
But I think it's a mindset.
well-
I think it helps to help them see what we're doing.
At what point do we have to go past slowly, diplomatically pushing in to saying, we're just pushing in? Because I was doing what you're talking about in the early 90s and the late 80s. And now it's 2022. That's like 40 years of being polite. So as an OT, how long do you, roll down that path? Granted, I don't do that now, but I did it for a lot of years. I did it on the East Coast and on the West Coast. And the whole time, every time, it was develop the relationship with the teacher, come in, show why it benefited all of the students, et cetera, et cetera. When does it go into, like, in teachers, they call it pre-service. When does it go into teacher education that this is how these other functions work?
So depending on where you are, it is there already. So I know I present to our university here and a couple of other places, and it is included in a service model when you kind of talk about related service providers. I think there's a time and place to be diplomatic, and then there's also a time and place to, I'm not above forcing the issue if that's what I feel is the appropriate service for a kid. That's what's getting documented in their IEP. And I stand on the fact that that document is a legal document. And, if my professional medically licensed opinion as an OT is that kid needs to be seen in the naturally occurring environment in order to make progress, then that's what I'm going to put in their IEP. And again, like I try the diplomatic first. I try the let's push in, let's try it, like humor me. And then I go, oh, you know what? This is really what Johnny needs. Like, this is how I'm going to document I am providing my services. And only a few times if I had to push the issue that direction and just been like, hey, this is what's on the IEP. Sarah, I don't know if you've done anything like that to push the issue.
Yeah, I definitely have. And I think it comes down to having conversations. Like I've had those conversations with teachers, like what do you think I do in my speech therapy room that I don't do here? I've invited teachers to come in and see that what I'm doing in their classroom is really not that different, but talking about, for some of our students, they can't generalize from the therapy room into the classroom. And so sometimes showing them, like, look at all the great, like, they're like, oh, you know, they don't use their AAC device in the classroom. And I'm constantly, and then I would take them and say, okay, well, let's come see what it looks like in my therapy room. And they would come and they'd be like, yeah, they don't do any of that in my classroom. I was like, that's why I'm pushing into your classroom. Like, it doesn't matter if they can only communicate in my therapy room. We need them
Right.
everywhere, which is why I'm pushing in. And so having those conversations and then also approaching it, I think, Alyssa, you mentioned, how can I partner with you? What can I do while I'm in here to help support you? As you support these students, I think when you take it from that approach, that I'm here to work with you, it just has a different feeling to it. And again, Mary, there are some people where I've had to be like really explicit, like, yep, I don't care that you don't really want me here. This is what's in the best interest of the student. But I would say 9 times out of 10, once we sat down and had that conversation, or I invited them to see what it looks like, they made that understanding on their own, because we all came into education because we want to do what's best for students. And so I don't think that they're saying pull out because they feel like it's in the best, you know, it's not in the best interest of that student. It's just that they maybe don't know any different right now.
Yeah. But
All right.
they're definitely overwhelmed, and they don't even have enough parapros. You know, they want parapros, and they've been waiting for a long time to get more parapros. They, you know, it's just an overwhelming. It was overwhelming situation. It was a failing school, basically. People were quitting, students were leaving, and so, yeah.
I was gonna say, yep, I gotta head out to get to my next adventure.
Thank you. Thank you all
Thanks.
for listening. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Naomi, for running the ship.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.